Hey guys, tonight we step softly across polished stone floors, past paper lanterns flickering low in the corners, and into the hush of a Tang Dynasty sleep chamber. The air is thick with sandalwood smoke and quiet anticipation. You brush aside a woven curtain and step into a small room, lined with embroidered silk cushions and linen-stuffed pillows. The ceiling arches gently, shaped like an inverted lotus leaf. Somewhere a water clock gurgles, marking the slow crawl toward midnight. You won't be texting, doom scrolling, or hitting snooze here. In fact, you probably wouldn't survive this place without at least 3 court attendants adjusting your bed angle, fluffing your dream pillow, and applying the appropriate herbal oil to your temples based on the lunar calendar. Ancient China didn't just tolerate sleep, it studied it, honored it, turned it into an art. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And drop your location and local time in the comments. I love seeing where and when you're tuning in from. Now dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You lie down on a silk coverlet stitched with cloud patterns and cranes in flight. The room smells faintly of osmanthus and old parchment. You're in a guest chamber used for sleep consultations. Yes, those were a thing. Wealthy families would commission private clinics to diagnose and guide their slumber. Not like a rushed therapist's office, but more like a spa meets astrology lab meets grandma's advice corner. Outside the window, moonlight dapples a courtyard garden. Peonies nod slowly in the breeze, and the sound of distant bamboo wind chimes plays like a lullaby for ghosts. In this chamber, you are not expected to do. You are expected to drift. Nearby sits a low lacquered table holding items that make your modern nightstand look like a chaotic junk pile. Here, there's a carved ivory tool used to apply scented oil behind the ears. There's a small jade disc used to cool the mind by gently pressing it to the forehead. And a ceramic fox-shaped box that probably holds dried herbs you don't recognize and are 80% sure would make you hallucinate or solve math equations in your sleep. Historians still argue whether these tools were more symbolic than functional, but the detail and craftsmanship say something else. Sleep wasn't just necessary, it was sacred. Your sleep position? That mattered. People here followed something called the 8 harmonious postures, which basically told you how not to sleep like a rag doll. Each position had its own purpose. Side sleeping to encourage gentle dreams. Back sleeping for spiritual openness. Fetal curl for emotional recovery. One scroll even warned against crane neck pose, which we're guessing is the Tang equivalent of falling asleep hunched over your laptop. And pillows. Not a fluffy, saggy afterthought like today. They were serious business. You're now resting your head on a linen-stuffed rectangular block stitched with calming mantras. Pillows were chosen based on season, ailment, even mood. Porcelain for summer heat. Bamboo for anxious hearts. Silk for vivid dreaming. One fringe theory even suggested that placing certain minerals inside pillows could ward off nightmares. Jade, for example, was believed to cool the fire of restless thoughts. There was also the scent factor. The chamber's walls were likely treated with plant resins to subtly perfume the air, like living inside an herbal vaporizer. During sleep consultations, doctors would ask what smells visited your dreams. If you dreamt of oranges, you might be prescribed a citrus-soaked sachet. If you dreamed of nothing but charcoal and shadows, they might switch you to peony root and mugwort. You shift slightly and realize even the quilt has a weight to it. A reassuring heaviness designed to mimic the pressure of being embraced. Weighted blankets before they were a TikTok trend, and now the lights dim further. Not by switch, but by slow-burning oil lamps fading with purpose. Your eyes follow the silhouettes dancing on the rice paper walls. A bird, a tree, someone playing the flute far off. Sleep is coming not as surrender, but as a carefully designed ritual. One that makes you feel seen, safe, and strangely elegant. Outside, the cicadas begin their song, a steady pulse, hypnotic and warm. Somewhere in this complex, a scholar is finishing a poem to tuck beneath his pillow. A healer is preparing a bedtime brew thick with lotus and plum. A dream recorder is setting out ink and scrolls in case he's summoned to interpret someone's midnight vision of a white dragon riding a cloud. And you're already floating. Just imagine your usual bedroom trying to compete with this. You wonder briefly, how many dreams were dreamt on this very mat? How many people whispered secrets into the pillows, hoping they'd rise like steam into the next world? The Tang Dynasty didn't separate sleep from soul. To dream was to listen, to ancestors, to gods, to hidden parts of the self. And while some modern scholars wave away these rituals as charming superstition, others argue they reveal a nuanced understanding of psychology wrapped in poetry and tradition. Some even believe these rooms functioned as both sleep labs and confession booths. You weren't just sleeping, you were seeking. As your breath slows, your mind starts to unspool. You picture a dreamscape forming. Silken bridges, silver koi, a tea garden where everyone speaks in riddles. The chamber folds around you like a silk cocoon. You're no longer visiting the past. You're inside it. And right here, under the sleeping gaze of dynasties long gone, you are exactly where you're meant to be. You wake, if you can call it that, not to a blaring alarm, but to the sound of brushstrokes against bamboo. Just beyond the lattice screen, you hear the soft scratch of ink on wood, like a sleepy cricket recording its memoir. You blink slowly. The room is the same, still hushed and amber-lit, but something's shifted. A presence. You rise, push aside the gauze curtain, and step barefoot into a quieter chamber, where one very tired boy is trying very hard not to fall asleep while doing his job. Meet the Dreamkeeper's apprentice. He's about 12, or maybe 17. It's hard to tell through the cloud of sleep deprivation and honor-bound anxiety clinging to him like a damp cloak. You can almost hear his inner monologue. Don't smudge the characters, don't drool on the bamboo. Please, no more dreams about fish. He's seated at a low desk, surrounded by scrolls that resemble flattened reeds, each one etched with meticulously painted dream records. His job? To record the dreams of others, nobles, monks, merchants who could afford such services. You'd think it was glamorous, maybe a little mystical, but really it's a lot of staying awake, squinting at symbols, and trying not to get flicked in the forehead by his sleepy but ever-watchful master who, at the moment, is snoring gently in a corner. This master, gray-bearded and wrapped in a robe that smells of ink and old tea, has likely been interpreting dreams for decades. He claims to have once diagnosed a noblewoman's pregnancy based solely on her dream of falling pomegranates. Historians still argue whether that was intuition, coincidence, or pure Tang-era gossip. The apprentice reaches for a narrow reed pen, dips it in ink infused with mulberry bark, and begins etching a fresh account. A silver carp leapt over a moon gate. Dreamer reports feeling both joy and confusion. Prescribed warm milk with cardamom. You lean closer and notice the writing style, a blend of poetic metaphor and oddly clinical precision. It's not just "I dreamt of a snake," it's "a coiled serpent of the north, jade-eyed, emerged from snow. Bit the left ankle." Apparently dreams didn't just reveal the soul, they revealed imbalances in chi, foreshadowed illness, or signaled changes in fortune. But not all dreams were treated equally. The apprentice has a reference scroll nearby, a massive compilation of dream symbols passed down through generations. Elephants mean prosperity, unless they're flying, in which case, apparently, your taxes are going up. Fire could mean passion or intestinal upset. And dreams of teeth falling out? Yes, yep. That old classic. Even back then it was associated with grief, though one footnote suggests it might also mean your spouse is hiding dumplings from you. You look around and notice bamboo slats stored in carefully labeled bundles. Dreams of rain, dreams of tigers, unclear, recurring, kias, fishy. One pile is simply labeled Dreams of Government Officials, which sounds like the world's least relaxing bedtime storybook. And yet, this wasn't a sideshow. This was science in its own mystical way. People believed the soul could leave the body during sleep, exploring realms where ancestors and spirits lingered. That belief came with responsibility. If your dream self wandered, you'd better document where it went. Dreams could be evidence in court. Yes, court. There's one anecdote about a high-ranking official who dreamt he was chased by a red-eyed donkey. The emperor's advisors interpreted it as a sign of betrayal, leading to a full investigation. Spoiler, the donkey was innocent. Fringe tidbit? Dream theft. That's right, some ancient texts warn of spiritual tricksters who could steal your dreams while you slept. Kind of like ancient sleep hackers. The apprentice keeps a charm tucked in his sleeve, small, made of copper, and pressed with a turtle sigil, said to protect him from dream burglars. Is it effective? Unclear, but he hasn't reported any missing dreams. Yet. He pauses to rub his eyes. You can tell he's longing to crawl onto one of the nearby mats and let himself slip into his own dream, but apprentices rarely wrote down their dreams. Theirs were considered too messy, too unformed, still full of adolescent nonsense and poorly digested dumplings. Only when the master deemed him soul mature could he begin recording his own night journeys. Until then, he serves others. Outside, the sky is still dark, but it has that odd tinge of near dawn, a color you can't quite name. Maybe moon-washed ink or pre-bird blue. You sip from a ceramic cup left out for visitors. Inside is something that tastes like chamomile, but with a funkier, more root-like edge. It's supposed to help keep you on the edge of sleep. Not awake, not dreaming, just hovering. As the apprentice lays out the next bamboo slat, you spot one already filled with a dream about a lion with a woman's voice who taught arithmetic. It's dated to the previous week and marked with a red wax seal, indicating it was deemed prophetic. The seal means the master might present it to a regional advisor, or keep it in a locked cabinet for future omens. You're starting to see how big this whole operation is. The apprentice isn't just taking notes. He's feeding into a centuries-long project, a collective unconscious given form. Historians are still divided on whether these scrolls were ever meant for wide public reading, or if they were more like personal sleep diaries kept under spiritual lock and key. The apprentice finally leans back, stretching with a long yawn. He catches your gaze, not startled, just sleepy, and mutters something that sounds like dreams are heavier than they look. You nod, silently agreeing. There's a weight to all of this. A kind of sacred tiredness. As the master stirs and grunts, the apprentice scrambles to look busy, quickly brushing a new character onto the page. It translates roughly to fog, though given his mood it might also mean, I need a nap. You step away, leaving him to his sleepy vigil, back through the curtain into your own chamber. You lie down, feeling the strange comfort of knowing your dreams too would have been studied, sorted, and perhaps whispered about behind a lacquered screen. Somewhere, another apprentice is waking up, ready to interpret your nighttime vision of a flying goose that sounded like your cousin. Sleep is serious here, but also weirdly delightful, and that's exactly how it should be. You're now deep inside the Forbidden City, though you wouldn't know it by the stillness. Gone are the bustling corridors of palace life. No shouts from court officials, no clack of embroidered boots on polished stone. Just a long corridor bathed in moonlight and muffled by heavy silence. And at the end of it, a room you probably weren't supposed to find. This is the Emperor's nap chamber. The door doesn't creak, of course, it whispers. It knows not to disturb the sacred act taking place within. You step in, and it feels like entering a temple, but not one built for gods. No incense, no chanting, just layer after layer of thick curtains, smooth jade tiles, and quiet authority. Everything here says sleep is power. The Emperor is not present, you don't get that lucky, but the room tells his story all the same. The bed is massive, raised high like a throne, surrounded by folding screens painted with drifting clouds and cranes mid-flight. An overhead canopy muffles even the sound of breath. This isn't just a place to sleep. It's a strategy room for the subconscious, a tactical bedchamber, an imperial dream tank. You stand still, suddenly aware that you're witnessing something few ever did, the inner workings of royal slumber. During the Ming and Qing dynasties especially, sleep was scheduled for emperors. Yes, napping had a slot on the daily docket, right after graciously accept tribute, and just before get yelled at by senior ministers. And these naps weren't left to chance. A special official known as the sleep attendant, we're not kidding, oversaw the environment. Temperature was measured using water bowls. Sound levels were adjusted with silk tapestries hung at precise angles. A physician would check pulse points before and after just to make sure the emperor didn't dream of rebellion or worse, stomach cramps. One mainstream historical account even describes an emperor who had dream anxiety. He reportedly avoided napping without his trusted dream interpreter seated in the next room. If anything vivid or ominous occurred, the interpreter was woken up and asked to translate it before tea was served. Some advisors weren't allowed in court meetings unless the emperor's nap had been successful. Try using that as an excuse at your next staff meeting. The room smells faintly of agarwood and old lacquer. You brush your fingers across a nearby pillow, filled not with feathers or down, but a blend of powdered deer antler and mung bean husks, believed to cool the brain and promote noble thoughts. Royal dreams needed to be free of commoner chaos. No chickens, no leaking roofs, and definitely no dreams about running late for the imperial gala in your underthings. A delicate bell sits on the nightstand. Its purpose? To summon the dream reader should the emperor wake with a particularly cryptic vision. On some nights, this ritual happened multiple times. Dreams involving turtles, eclipses, or oddly silent birds were treated like encrypted state secrets. They were analyzed in hushed tones and logged in guarded ledgers. One strange dream involving a peach tree uprooting itself and walking west led to weeks of paranoid military maneuvers along the western border. Historians still debate whether these interpretations actually influenced real policy, or if they were used as convenient excuses for decisions already made. Like, oh, we're raising taxes again? Well, I dreamt of a leaking jar, so clearly the treasury is empty. A little dream. PR never heard. Fringe tidbit: the dream throne. One particularly eccentric Qing emperor reportedly commissioned a secondary bed used only when he felt an auspicious dream approaching. According to old texts, this bed was crafted with phoenix feather inlays, probably symbolic, and aligned with a specific star cluster known as the Heavenly Grotto. The idea was that by sleeping at the right celestial angle, he could intercept divine messages more clearly. Kind of like tuning your dream radio to the right frequency, using extremely expensive furniture. You cross the chamber quietly, your steps softened by woven mats dyed in midnight blue. There's a cabinet tucked behind one of the painted screens. Inside? Dozens of rolled dream reports, each sealed with colored thread indicating tone. Red for warnings, gold for blessings, gray for uncertain. You unroll one carefully. In the third watch, the Son of Heaven dreamt of a carp, transforming into a scholar who then recited the classic of filial piety backwards. He awoke confused but well-rested. Honestly, same. Sleep here wasn't about rest, it was about command. The Emperor was expected to embody cosmic order, so his dreams were part of his spiritual performance. If his sleep was chaotic, the world might be too. It sounds intense, but in a way, it's oddly flattering. Imagine your 2 p.m. nap determining the fate of an entire dynasty. You sit briefly on a silk cushion and feel its cool weight settle around you. A breeze curls in through a carved screen, stirring the incense just enough to make the shadows flicker. You wonder how many emperors dreamed here. How many woke with a start, gasping from visions of floods or phoenixes, and wondered, what now? Not all were believers, of course. Some emperors dismissed dreams entirely, called them mind dust, and warned against interpreting shadows. But even they had sleep chambers designed like temples. Even they surrounded themselves with silence and scent. Because whether or not you believed in dreams, you knew their power. You leave the room slowly, stepping back into the corridor with the careful grace of someone leaving an altar. The door eases shut behind you, sealing away centuries of royal sleep. And as you walk back toward your own borrowed chamber, you can't help but think, maybe there's something noble in your sleep too. Maybe every dream you forget was still part of something bigger, a quiet echo of a world that once believed sleep was the most important thing a person could do. You drift back into the night air, through a courtyard tangled with moonlight and low-humming lanterns, until your feet find their way down a corridor lined with stone lions and willow shadows. You don't remember choosing this path. It feels more like it chose you. And at the end of it waits the Dream Manual Pavilion. It's not grand, not imperial, but it hums with importance. A squat building with sloped eaves and ivy crawling up its wooden bones, this place once held 1,000 secrets about the mind's midnight theater. Its windows are closed, but light pulses from within, soft, golden, bookish. You slide the door open like a polite ghost. Inside, it smells like parchment and pine soot. The shelves curve like waves, hugging the room in quiet stacks of knowledge. This is where the dream manuals lived. Handwritten, annotated, revised across centuries by scholars, monks, physicians, and the occasional drama-prone mystic. You run your finger along the edge of a scroll. It's brittle but sure of itself, like a librarian who's seen some things. You ease one open. The first characters leap at you in elegant brushstrokes. The classic of dream symmetries. You try to read slowly. To dream of ascending stairs brings elevation. To descend suggests loss. If the stairs are broken, perhaps delay one's travel plans. It's part folk wisdom, part diagnostic tool, part poetry. You love how casually it drops life advice between metaphors, like a fortune cookie that took itself to grad school. These manuals weren't for idle reading. They were guidebooks, yes, but also used in court cases, healing practices, matchmaking, and military decision-making. Dreamt of a bleeding peach? Better cancel that wedding. These interpretations had weight. Entire households paused to consult the scrolls when someone dreamed of fire or a pale horse. A bad dream could mean a wronged ancestor. A good one? That your recently deceased uncle was finally chilling in paradise. One famous manual, The Forest of Dreams, cataloged over 2,000 recurring dream types, everything from dragons to sneezing monkeys to being buried in lacquer. Some interpretations are direct. To dream of water overflowing a basin suggests financial trouble. Others are so cryptic, they almost loop back into clarity. If you see a man with 3 eyebrows, fortune comes disguised. Honestly, that tracks. Fringe tidbit incoming. One manual contains an entire section on dreams involving paper. Yes, paper. Ripped paper, folded paper, eating paper, paper catching fire. It's believed that during the Song Dynasty's boom in bureaucracy, paper dreams spiked, probably because half the population was stressed out about civil service exams. Historians still argue whether this spike was genuinely mystical or just the early signs of test anxiety and statewide insomnia. You slide out another scroll, this one labeled simply, Visions in the Hour of the Rat. A side note explains that dreams between 11 p.m. and 1 a.m., the rat hour, were considered the most potent, as the boundary between worlds thinned and the spirit could wander farthest. Dreams from this window were kept in special ink, preserved more carefully, and often decoded using planetary charts. You pause to imagine it. A scholar hunched over a table at midnight, cross-referencing a man's dream of bamboo forest with Mars location in the sky. The result? A decision to delay grain shipments by 2 weeks. That's some impressive dream-based logistics. One particularly vivid account is stored in a bound folio near the back of the room. Its cover is scrawled with hasty brushstrokes and a thumbprint. inside, an entire section devoted to dreams of teeth. You knew we'd come back to that. Turns out it wasn't just grief. Some believed a dream of falling teeth foretold a political betrayal. One nobleman even had 3 teeth pulled just in case. That, friends, is preventative dreaming at its most intense. You sit for a while on a low wooden bench, letting your eyes drift over the room. There's a lantern flickering against a scroll about dreams that involve birds and their unusual attire. Yes, apparently feathered robes were a thing in the dream world. You wonder what they'd make of your dream about flamingos playing mahjong. Probably a sign to stop snacking after sunset. And while these manuals might sound whimsical, they were part of serious cultural infrastructure. Physicians studied them alongside pulse charts. Shamans quoted them during ceremonies. Families kept pocket versions in bedside drawers. One of the oldest copies of a dream manual was found buried with its owner. Maybe he figured it might come in handy in the afterlife, or maybe he just really liked metaphors. Interestingly, scholars continue to debate whether dream manuals were written to explain dreams or to shape them. Some argue that by reading a scroll about foxes and lanterns, you might dream of them that very night, thus creating a self-fulfilling prophecy. Did the scrolls predict dreams, or did they program them? Chicken, meat, egg. A small wooden box catches your attention. Inside? Dream charms, thin metal tokens engraved with single characters. Stillness. Return. Rain. Forget. These were pressed into wax tablets or tucked beneath pillows. If you feared nightmares, you'd sleep with the stillness charm under your tongue. Do not try this at home. The thought occurs to you. These dream manuals weren't written to impress. They weren't theories locked in academic vaults. They were practical, messy, lovingly preserved collections of what it feels like to be human. Scared, curious, superstitious, and just trying to get a good night's sleep without being chased by a demon pig in your subconscious. You close the scrolls gently, your fingers tingling with their ancient residue. Outside, a breeze stirs the ivy. You realize you haven't heard a single bird chirp since entering the pavilion. As if even the birds respect what happens here. Or maybe they're off reading their own dream manuals. You step into the cool night again, mind buzzing with images. Carps, scrolls, eyebrowed men, stares both broken and blessed. The dream world is vast, but here, at least, someone tried to map it. Your feet crunch softly along a gravel path now, the night pressing in comfortably around your shoulders like a weighted blanket. Somewhere in the distance, water trickles over stone. And as you pass under a moon gate carved with vines and clouds, you find yourself in a place far more humble than the Dream Manual Pavilion, but no less important. A rural healing house. The thatched roof sags slightly in the middle. Its walls are simple clay and timber. There's no gold leaf here, no lacquered scrolls or imperial symbols. Just the quiet creak of bamboo in the wind and the warm smell of herbal poultices. You step inside. This is where the common folk slept off their fevers, dreams, and sometimes their worries. And here's the twist. Even these humble clinics treated sleep as medicine. You see a mat on the floor, woven from reed and lined with cotton. Beside it is a worn wooden table stacked with little drawers. Each one is labeled in a hurried hand. Mugwort, goji bark, dried lotus, powdered ginseng. A mortar and pestle sits nearby, still flecked with something green. This wasn't a place to escape your dreams. It was a place to talk about them. Decode them. Use them. Traditional Chinese medicine viewed dreams as more than mental clutter. They were diagnostic tools, messages from your inner organs, whispered in metaphor. If you dreamt of flying, the heart might be overstimulated. If you dreamed of heavy rain, the spleen could be out of balance. And if you dreamt of arguing with your ancestors, well, maybe lay off the pepper sauce at dinner. Physicians, real ones, not just shamans, were trained to read these signals. The ancient medical text Huangdi Neijing, the Yellow Emperor's inner classic, goes deep into this. It says dreams aren't just products of the mind, but reflect imbalances in the flow of qi, the life energy that runs through you like a very polite, invisible subway system. Historians still argue whether sleep in rural clinics was actually restorative or just the only free thing available. But anecdotal evidence shows people lined up for these treatments. Poor families might travel for days to get a diagnosis based on a recurring nightmare like, "Hello, yes, my cousin has dreamt of falling into a well 6 nights in a row, and we're concerned he's about to propose to the wrong person." Now, for your fringe fact, some healers kept dream maps. These were hand-painted diagrams of the human body showing how specific organs might create specific dream themes. Dream of climbing a mountain? Kidney imbalance? Dream of being chased? Liver heat? Dream of turning into a bird and yelling at people in classical Chinese? Okay, that might just be stress. One tattered map on the wall near you shows a figure with colors flowing through its body. Red streaks in the chest, cool blue around the feet. Tiny handwritten notes suggest treatments. A strong dream of fire might be treated with mulberry leaves, soaked overnight and applied to the soles of the feet. A dream of endless stairs. Again with the stairs. Might mean restless qi, best treated with licorice root and a short nap facing northeast. The best part? These clinics treated sleep as a social experience. You didn't hide your nightmares, you brought them in, laid them out like symptoms. Some clinics had dream gathering, but where patients and physicians would share dream experiences around the fire, wrapped in blankets, sipping medicinal broth. Somewhere between group therapy and spooky story hour, it turned into one of the more comforting scenes in rural medical history. You wander into the back room of the clinic and find several narrow cots, each with a simple wool blanket and a jade charm strung over the pillow. The charms aren't decorative, they're calibrated. The jade has been chosen for its cooling energy and carved with characters meant to calm the Shen, the spirit. One says, "Quiet mind," another says, "Return to root." You lie down on one just for a moment and let yourself imagine being one of the villagers here. Sick, maybe, or just deeply tired, and finding peace in the slow logic of this place. No beeping machines, no flickering fluorescents, just herbal steam, warm hands, and someone writing down your strange dream about the goose that turned into your father. One dusty record tucked under a table leg describes a patient, a woman in her 70s, who kept dreaming of red shoes. Every night, same dream. Red shoes walking away from her down a narrow alley. Eventually, the physician determined this represented a long-ignored grief. She had lost her daughter years ago and never spoken of it. The treatment? Not a potion, not acupuncture. He gave her a ritual, a tea made of chrysanthemum and sweet flag, and a soft chant to recite before bed. The dream stopped 2 weeks later. Coincidence? Possibly. Healing? Definitely. You return to the front room and catch sight of something charming. A child's dream journal, half burned around the edges, likely tossed in the stove and rescued at the last second. Its cover is scrawled with crooked characters and drawings of pigs and hats. Inside, entries like, "Last night I was a tree, then a frog, then I ate soup with the moon." Very good. Honestly, same. The doctor's notes beside it show he took it seriously. He'd written, "Fire dreams 2 nights in a row. Might be lung heat. Reduce chili at dinner." There's something deeply endearing about this. The way even the most surreal jellyfish-colored dreams were gently cradled in the hands of a healer who thought, yes, this matters. Of course, not all clinics were this serene. Some had multiple patients snoring in the same room, chickens outside, one herbalist frantically boiling 3 different teas at once. But the core belief held strong, that sleep was not passive, that dreams weren't just chaos, they were data, emotion, sometimes even premonition. And sleep itself was an active treatment. You step outside again into the now deeper night. Stars blink lazily overhead. The breeze carries the scent of sandalwood and fresh rain. The clinic behind you glows faintly, a tiny house of stories stitched from sleep and herbs, and you feel it again. That sensation that somewhere in this old system of wood and wind and dream logic, you've started to slow, to soften, maybe even to heal. The earth beneath your feet shifts subtly as you step beyond the rural clinic. The gravel becomes smoother, the air heavier with incense and pine resin. You're climbing now, a gentle path winding uphill beneath the quiet watch of cedar trees. Lanterns swing gently from hooked posts, their light pooling like gold ink across the stones. Something higher awaits, something older. You reach the entrance of a mountaintop monastery carved into the cliffs like it grew there. Monks once walked here in bare feet, heads shaved, robes whispering around their ankles. You can almost hear them still. The whole mountain seems to breathe with memory. This isn't just a spiritual place, it was once a hub of elite sleep philosophy. You duck beneath the low archway and enter a chamber bathed in the mellow glow of oil lamps. The walls are covered in faded murals, celestial landscapes, swirling clouds, and tall, inscrutable deities watching from starry thrones. And in the center, resting on a perfectly square platform of stone and wood, is the dream incubation bed. Yes, that was a thing. This wasn't your average sleeping spot. The bed was elevated, often surrounded by charms, herbs, and polished stones arranged in precise mandalas. Before sleeping, the monk or pilgrim would lie on it after meditating. For hours, sometimes days, chanting quietly, fasting, drinking only teas infused with mugwort, astragalus, or even powdered pearl. Why? Because this was sacred sleep, not just for rest, but to invoke visions. Some practitioners believe that dreams, properly induced, could offer direct access to wisdom. Not metaphor, not diagnosis. Answers. Real ones from celestial beings, ancestral spirits, or universal consciousness itself. Think of it as downloading a firmware update from the divine. And it wasn't just the monks. Occasionally, high-ranking nobles or even military strategists would ascend the mountain for this sleep. Historians still argue whether one general's sudden retreat during a major campaign came after a dream he had right here. He claimed he saw a red phoenix fly backwards and took it as a cosmic nope. Your fringe fact of the evening? The monastery kept dream archives, boxes upon boxes of parchment filled with handwritten reports of visions had on this very bed. One scroll tells of a monk who dreamt he turned into a pine tree for 100 years. He woke up crying and immediately swore off speech for the rest of his life. That vow lasted 27 years until he stubbed his toe and muttered something under his breath. We've all been there. You walk slowly around the bed, noting the symbols carved into its sides. Clouds, deer, mountain peaks. Above it hangs a bell-shaped wind chime made of bone and bronze. The breeze through the chamber makes it sing, soft and eerie like a lullaby from another dimension. The ritual of dream incubation wasn't limited to one bed. Some monks had personalized chambers, arranged according to geomantic principles, what we might now call feng shui. The bed had to face a certain direction. Water needed to flow nearby. No metal tools could be within 10 feet. It sounds elaborate, but if you're trying to catch a dream from the cosmos, you don't want to mess it up by leaving your iron teacup in the wrong corner. You peer into a side room lined with books and worn-out brushes. One tome sits open, a soft puff of dust rising from its pages. Its calligraphy reads, "He who dreams under the eye of the dragon must not speak of it for 7 days, lest the vision dissolve into dust." Well noted. These dream spaces were deeply personal. A monk might spend years preparing for one vision, abstaining from sex, meat, strong spices, and even music to purify his mind. When the dream finally came, if it came, it might only last a moment. A word, a flash of color, a smell. And yet that could change everything. In fact, one of the most influential commentaries on Taoist cosmology was based entirely on a dream experienced in this monastery. One where the writer claimed to become the moon and see time as a spiral. His drawings of that dream are still studied by scholars and confused teenagers alike. You sit down in the corner of the chamber, letting the weight of this place press gently into your bones. It's deeply quiet but not empty. The silence feels curated, shaped like clay around you. And you realize the monks believed something powerful. That sleep was not the opposite of consciousness, but its extension. The part where you leave your body behind and let your spirit do the talking. One monk, whose name translates roughly as cloud beneath rain, wrote, "Sleep is the closing of the eyes, but dreaming is the opening of the soul." You can't help but nod, but another chamber down the hall glows with faint blue light. You slip inside and find more dream incubation beds, but these are smaller, arranged in a perfect circle around a central pool. The water is black as ink and still as glass. Apparently, monks would sleep here during specific planetary alignments. They believed certain dreams could only arrive when the stars were in harmony, like backstage passes from the universe. One fragment of scroll says, "The dream of the black turtle arrives only when Saturn sleeps." We're not exactly sure what that means, but it sounds metal. There's something touching about the devotion here. These people believed sleep was not just downtime, but sacred time. A bridge, a teacher. And they gave it the same respect we give to sermons, to music, to first kisses. You move back toward the central chamber where the wind chime sways and the dream bed waits in its perfect geometry. You lie down just for a moment on the cool platform. It's firm, humbling, but oddly comforting. You close your eyes. For a second, you imagine what you might dream here. A conversation with your great-grandmother, maybe. A flying serpent that hands you a noodle. Or just a feeling, a strange, wordless certainty that something in you has shifted. Whatever it is, you'd write it down. Maybe not in a scroll, but maybe in your phone notes app at 3 a.m., spelled badly but still electric. The monks would have understood. You open your eyes again, the dream bed beneath you, the air thick with sandalwood and mystery. Time to move on, but part of you will stay here, nestled among the stars and cedar beams. You descend the mountain with the slow ease of someone who's walked through a memory too soft to hold tight. The monastery fades behind you like smoke in moonlight, and ahead, the world changes again. Gone are the temples and dream beds. You find yourself walking into a wide, bustling city, its streets dimmed for the night, but alive with breath. Lanterns bob over windows. Dogs bark once and settle. Somewhere a woman hums to a baby too sleepy to protest. This is Chang'an. You've slipped into the Tang Dynasty, a golden age for poetry, painting, and, believe it or not, sophisticated ideas about sleep architecture. Yes, even back then people argued about bedroom layout. You're standing in the courtyard of a scholar's home. It's late, most of the city is quiet, but you can see a flicker of lamplight from a room at the far end. You move toward it, past a mulberry tree and a row of glazed pots filled with pickled plum and ginger. Inside, a study brims with scrolls and incense smoke. Pillows are arranged around a central kong, an elevated brick sleeping platform heated from beneath by hot air. Cozy, ingenious. Ancient Chinese radiant floor heating, because nobody sleeps well with cold feet. But this isn't just about warmth. The orientation of the kang, the shape of the room, the type of wood used in the beams above, it all follows principles outlined in the Zhai Fa, or house law. This set of geomantic rules determined how spaces should be designed for good sleep, better health, and favorable dreams. And not just for the living. Even tombs followed these laws in case the dead wanted a good nap too. The scholar you're imagining now would have arranged his sleep space meticulously. Head facing south. No mirror across from the bed. No dried chili peppers hanging nearby. Those were believed to stir the fire element and provoke nightmares. The pillow? Not too soft. Often made of ceramic or jade, believe it or not. Sleep was serious business. You didn't just flop onto whatever pile of blankets you had lying around. Historians still argue whether these arrangements had measurable effects. or if everyone was just really into interior design mixed with cosmic anxiety. But considering how elaborate these blueprints were, you can't help but feel the intention behind them was deeply human. The desire for peace. Here's a fun fringe tidbit. Dream theft was a legitimate fear in some Tang circles. People believed that certain configurations or certain cursed objects in the room could allow spirits or even rivals to siphon off your dreams. To counter this, people hung bundles of garlic, plum branches, or small mirrors etched with spells over their doors. One popular charm read, "Return to sender with interest." Now, let's talk about beds themselves. They weren't just platforms, they were often miniature fortresses, draped in gauzy curtains to keep out bugs, spirits, and, if we're honest, nosy relatives. Some even had secret compartments underneath for dream-related tools. Scrolls, stones, or in some cases, dried lizard tails. Why lizard tails? Unclear. Historians have theories. You don't want to hear them before bed. One preserved Tang-era bedroom shows silk-embroidered sleep robes folded precisely at the foot of the bed, with slippers facing east. The bedding was light in summer, heavy in winter, always scented, lavender, jasmine, or bitter orange, depending on what dreams you were aiming for. Want to summon a prophetic vision? Sleep beneath a blanket washed in rainwater during the first thunderstorm of the year. You pass into another room now, a child's bedroom. Simpler, but still careful. A carved headboard shaped like a dragon's open mouth. Jade beads above the cradle. A small red pouch tucked under the mattress with dried lotus seeds and a single copper coin. This was the dream safe. A charm bundle meant to protect children from night terrors and wandering spirits. The open scholarly debate here, whether these rituals genuinely affected the quality or content of dreams, or if the very act of creating a protective space simply calmed the mind enough to invite peaceful sleep. Some researchers argue it's the physical object that holds power. Others say it's all about belief. Still others shrug and say, maybe everyone just really liked the smell of bitter orange. As you ease into a wide hallway, a painted screen blocks a breeze. It shows a famous Tang dream scene. A scholar floats down a river made of starlight, seated on a lotus leaf, holding a poem that writes itself in golden ink. The artist has painted the scholar with one sandal on and one sandal off, because apparently, even in the height of cosmic travel, people can't keep track of their shoes. You linger a moment longer and glance toward the calligraphy table near the window. A half-finished verse lies there. It reads, "Last night I dreamt the moon became a fish and swam through my pillow, leaving silver scales behind." Tang poets were obsessed with dreams. Some believed they were portals, others metaphors, and a few, possibly insomniacs, just thought they were excellent writing prompts. Dream poetry even became a courtly pastime. A nobleman might challenge his guest to dream something worth writing down, and then judge the results over tea. The prize? Usually more tea. Back in the bedroom, you lie down on the Kong, letting the residual warmth wrap around your limbs. You stare up at the painted ceiling beams. Blue and gold clouds, stylized phoenixes, delicate cranes. The bed doesn't creak. The silence here is cultivated, the air barely moving. Everything feels arranged to hold sleep gently in two hands. You understand now that sleep in this culture wasn't just rest, it was alignment. With the stars, with nature, with your own body. You weren't just knocking out for a few hours, you were tuning in. You shut your eyes, just briefly, and imagine what it would be like to live in a time where sleep had a blueprint. Where the shape of your room mattered. Where each night was a kind of ritual. A quiet slide into another layer of existence. Not just something you put off until your eyes burn, and if you dreamed of a fish swimming through your pillow, well, you'd write it down, you'd tell someone. Maybe even win a prize for it. You stretch as you rise from the warm Kang, your body reluctant to leave the comfort of that carefully composed Tang Dynasty sleep sanctuary. But curiosity, bless it, nudges you onward. Down winding alleys and through painted wooden gates, the city of Chang'an fades behind you. Lanterns give way to moonlight. cobblestone paths become dirt again, and you begin to smell smoke, pine, and something earthy, maybe wet rice paper or dried citrus peel. You're entering a rural apothecary's home. It's humble but proud. A thatched roof overhead, bundles of herbs hanging like leafy chandeliers. You duck through the low door frame into a long, warm room. It smells like old books, camphor and candied ginger. And sitting right in the middle of the floor is what you came for. A sleep recipe manual. Yes, recipes. But not for food, for dreams. You settle beside it, cross-legged on a straw mat. The book is handmade, pages bound with string and speckled, with tiny pressed petals. Its title in deep black strokes. Instructions for harmonious slumber and gentle visions. Catchy. These manuals weren't rare in their time. Known as Mengshu or dream books, they were often handwritten by herbalists, monks, or curious scholars who wanted to experiment with shaping the content and quality of their sleep. You turn a few pages, fingers brushing over faint diagrams, where to press on your foot before bed to encourage peaceful dreams, which teas to brew for prophetic visions, what charms to hang if you want to avoid dreaming altogether, maybe because you saw a ghost once and politely declined further visits. Your mainstream fact of the evening: mugwort was a major player in ancient Chinese dream-inducing pharmacology. This spiky little herb known as ai yi was burned like incense, brewed into tea, or even stuffed into sleep pillows. And yes, those were a thing too. Dream pillows. Let that one settle in. They weren't soft, fluffy affairs. Instead, they were stuffed with dried herbs tailored to your sleep goals. Want romance? Rose petals and longan. Want clarity? Chrysanthemum and mint. Want to finally stop dreaming about that guy from the tofu stall who ghosted you in 714 CE? Maybe toss in some valerian root and salt. You crack a smile as you imagine some groggy scholar angrily adjusting his dream pillow and muttering, "No tofu man tonight." Historians still argue whether these pillows had pharmacological effects or if it was mostly psychosomatic. But either way, they worked well enough and got popular enough that wealthy families commissioned ornate versions made from embroidered silk or porcelain, with herb sachets hidden inside carved compartments. Kind of like a mix between a throw pillow and a sleep spell. The dream manuals also offer some weirder advice. One section describes how to use crushed pearl mixed with plum wine before bed to encourage dreams of distant ancestors. Another suggests lying on your left side while listening to wind chimes to invoke visions of birds and flying. One recipe recommends a 3-day diet of only cucumbers and rice, followed by a nap under a sandalwood tree. Fringe fact? Some dream manuals caution against sleeping near cats. Not because of allergies, because they supposedly walk between dreams and might accidentally pull your soul out with them. Whether that's charming or terrifying is kind of up to you. Nearby, you spot a faded silk tapestry on the wall. It shows a woman sleeping beside a river, her hair drifting out behind her like a black current. Above her, her dream floats, a white fox dancing with a scholar on a moon bridge. You don't need a manual to know this one's symbolic. The fox in Chinese lore often represents transformation, and sometimes seduction, mischief, or even spirit possession. And that's the other thing. Dreams weren't just considered helpful, they were also risky. Too vivid, too frequent, or too weird, and someone might say you were being visited. Or worse, leaving your body while you slept. Which was great if you were a trained monk seeking enlightenment. Less great if you were a baker who just wanted to stop dreaming about arguing with his bread. You flip another page in the manual. A chart appears. 10 dream types. Prophetic, nostalgic, emotional, demonic, yikes, animal-based, ancestral, erotic, spicy, instructional, elemental, and meaningless. There's a long debate in the margin about whether dreaming of flying chickens counts as ancestral or meaningless. Honestly, depends on the chicken. Sleep hygiene, by the way, wasn't ignored. People were advised not to eat spicy food too late, avoid baths after sunset, and never sleep with your head pointed directly west, unless you were feeling a little too immortal and wanted to challenge fate. Oh, and sleep alone if your dreams have been troubled by echoes. Whatever that means. You lean back now, the dream manual resting open beside you. The room around you glows with soft candlelight, flickering against the jars of herbs. You imagine yourself as a traveling poet, stopping here for rest and inspiration, gently brewing your custom dream tea and stuffing your pillow with fragrant dried blossoms, wondering what your mind might serve up in the night. There's a sweetness to it, a kind of sleepy rebellion against the chaos of waking life. Why try to solve your worries by daylight when your subconscious can throw them into metaphorical dance parties with talking frogs? You sip from a warm porcelain cup, something bitter, dark, and laced with that telltale hint of mugwort. It tastes like ancient forests and forgotten memories. You lie back, surrounded by gentle herbal scents, the book still open beside you, and in that moment, you understand. Ancient dream manuals weren't just instructions, they were hopes, prayers with footnotes, an attempt to make sense of the world by wandering deeper into it. You close your eyes. Maybe tonight you'll dream of walking through a mountain of stars, or meeting an old version of yourself beneath a cherry tree, sipping tea and laughing like you've known each other forever. Maybe you'll dream of foxes. Or maybe, just maybe, you'll sleep deeply enough to remember nothing at all. You stir from your herb-scented dreams and roll quietly onto your side, still lingering in the candlelit afterglow of that apothecary's room. The dream manual lies half-closed near your elbow, and the faintest hint of mugwort still hums at the edges of your senses. But now, the scenery begins to shift again, gently like clouds rearranging themselves behind your eyes. Your body doesn't move, but the world does. Walls evaporate, and suddenly you're drifting into the courtyard of a much larger estate. A winding path of smooth stones crunches softly beneath your feet. Moonlight spills over finely raked sand and swirling patterns. Bonsai trees stand like tiny guardians in ceramic trays. And at the far end of the garden, you spot a pavilion, its silk curtains drifting in a wind you can't feel. Inside that pavilion, a physician. And not just any physician. This is a sleep doctor, though she wouldn't have called herself that. In the Song Dynasty, practitioners of medicine began to consider sleep not just a side effect of health, but a vital diagnostic tool. You sit cross-legged in the pavilion with her, the night brushing against your skin like cool silk. She leans over a scroll and makes notes with an ink brush, dipping it slowly, methodically between words. And as she speaks softly to a patient beside her, a young man with dark circles under his eyes, you listen. This is where sleep becomes medicine. Your mainstream fact for the night, the Song Dynasty, 960 to 1279 CE, was the first period in Chinese history where medical texts explicitly categorized different kinds of insomnia and sleep disorders. They didn't just treat sleeplessness as a vague complaint anymore. It became a symptom with defined patterns, causes, and most importantly, prescriptions. This physician is consulting the Taiping Sheng Hui Feng, an enormous medical compendium commissioned by the imperial court. Within its thousands of pages, remedies for poor sleep, restless dreams, excessive sleeping, sleepwalking, and even dream-induced fatigue, where people would wake up feeling exhausted from their dreams. Imagine telling your boss that you're too tired because you fought a dragon in your dreams all night. In the Song Dynasty, totally valid excuse. The good doctor here checks her patient's pulse, not just one, but 6 locations, using 3 fingers on each wrist. This pulse diagnosis technique helped determine which organ systems were unbalanced. And according to Chinese medical theory, each organ governs different aspects of sleep. Your liver? That's responsible for dream clarity and emotional processing. The heart governs the spirit and determines whether dreams are chaotic or calm. The spleen keeps your thoughts grounded so you don't dream about falling into bottomless wells or, worse, showing up to a Confucian exam naked. As she works, she prescribes an herbal mix called Toan Tao Nhan Tang, sour jujube seed decoction, still used today for insomnia. It's a blend of 5 herbs, aimed at calming the heart and nourishing yin energy. Translation? It helps your brain shut up at 3 a.m. Fringe tidbit time. Some Song physicians believe that wind, yes, wind, was a cause of disturbed sleep. Not the breeze itself, but an internal form of wind that could rise through the body, stirring the mind and scattering the soul. They called it wind invasion. The cure? Warm foods, sleep masks soaked in chrysanthemum tea, and bizarrely, wearing red silk around your ankles. Bright colors helped anchor your energy, kind of like fashion-forward dream seatbelts. Historians still argue whether this internal wind metaphor was poetic, practical, or just plain paranoid. But considering how much of song medicine worked through analogies, like fire rising or dampness pooling, it made sense in context. And besides, you can't argue with how nice a red silk anklet feels. The physician now lights a small cone of incense beside her patient. Not for mood, for medicine. This is a diagnostic incense, one that reacts subtly to the breath of the person sleeping beside it. If the smoke curls smoothly, the lungs are balanced. If it spirals or sputters, she knows to adjust her prescription. Imagine using scented smoke to check your vitals. Take that, Fitbit. The young man lies down on a padded mat. He wears a thin linen robe, a sachet of calming herbs tucked under his pillow. She watches him drift off, making notes as his breath deepens, the candlelight fluttering along the walls like sleepy fireflies. And you? You just sit there, soaking it in. Sleep is a diagnostic art. Sleep is a tool. Sleep is something that leaves fingerprints on the body. Outside the pavilion, a small bell chimes in the wind. And in the quiet, you remember a line from another song-era text. To sleep well is to return gently to the self. You wander through the rest of the estate, rooms dimly lit with lanterns and moonglow. A few family members sleep with calming stones placed on their chests, polished jade or hematite, said to anchor the soul during REM sleep. Others use spirit-calming combs, carved from sandalwood and brushed gently through the hair before bed to draw out anxious energy. One scholar sleeps on a slanted board, head higher than the feet, to prevent dreams from pooling in the heart. Another prefers a circular bed, believing that sharp corners trap qi and cause fragmented sleep. The sleep hacks were endless. Some drank mulberry wine. Some soaked their feet in hot water and mint. Others avoided reading poetry before bed to keep the mind from spiraling into imaginary debates with dead authors. Relatable. You turn one last corner and find yourself back under the stars, the pavilion behind you. A warm breeze carries the scent of sandalwood and ink, and you think, maybe we haven't changed all that much. We still wrestle with restless thoughts, we still crave deep rest, and we still whisper wishes to the dark, hoping that sleep brings not just escape, but understanding. The pavilion fades like a lingering dream, slipping away into soft mist as your steps carry you onward through a forest, washed in moonlight. The earth beneath your feet is mossy and silent, and somewhere in the distance a slow stream hums its lullaby. You pass under ancient trees, their roots coiled like sleeping dragons, until the trees thin out, and there it is, a Taoist monastery. Not one of golden grandeur, but of worn stone and polished wood, tucked against the side of a mountain that practically breathes serenity. You approach slowly, drawn by the flickering glow of oil lamps lining a narrow corridor. Inside, the scent is warm and grounding. Old incense, dusted scrolls, and mountain air. And then you hear it. Breathing. Steady, synchronized, as if the entire monastery is inhaling and exhaling as one. Welcome to a place where sleep is sacred. The Taoist monks here didn't just sleep to rest, they slept as part of a practice. You sit down quietly on a woven mat as a group of them begin their nightly ritual. Not exactly bedtime prayers, more like coordinated energy balancing. And no, this isn't your average light some candles and fluff your pillow routine. Tonight's mainstream fact: Taoist practitioners in early medieval and Tang dynasties developed detailed nighttime meditation rituals designed to align with specific hours of the night, each one linked to a bodily organ and a cosmic force. From 11 p.m. to 1 a.m., for example, the time of the gallbladder, monks would lie on their right side and visualize a green light spiraling down their spine. From 1 to 3 a.m., when the liver was most active, they'd imagine that same green light pooling in the belly like liquid jade. These weren't just visualizations for relaxation. They were diagnostic tools, energy work, and, according to some, gateways to astral projection. You know, casually leaving your body to go have a little cosmic wander, no big deal. You lie down on a mat, mimicking the monk's posture. The floor is firm but warm. One monk, an elder with eyebrows like frosted wings, chants in a voice so low it's more like a hum. And just like that, the lines between your physical body and the space around you begin to blur. According to Taoist texts, sleep was a form of alchemy. By breathing slowly and emptying the mind, a practitioner could refine the spirit during slumber, just as an alchemist refined base metals into gold. One scroll even suggested that dreams were the laboratory of the inner world, which, depending on the night, could mean discovering immortality, or reliving that time you tripped over a goat in public. Your fringe fact for tonight: some Taoist monks trained themselves to wake up briefly every 2 hours during sleep to perform micro-meditations. They believed this interrupted dreaming at key energetic intervals and allowed the spirit to resettle itself into the correct meridian pathways. Sleep tracker who? This wasn't random wakefulness. It was mapped to the flow of qi through the body. One midnight alarm to focus on the kidneys. One for the heart, one for the spleen. Kind of like sacred snooze buttons. Historians still argue whether these rituals had consistent physiological benefits or were simply intense exercises in self-discipline. Some point to modern sleep research and say this kind of segmented sleep matches natural circadian rhythms. Others claim it probably just made everyone cranky in the morning. You'd test it yourself, but let's be real, you barely handle getting up once without immediately texting why to your entire contact list. Back in the monastery, a monk offers you a tea made of goji berries and chrysanthemum, said to cool the liver and relax the mind. It's lightly sweet, floral, and just a little bitter at the end. Like a dream you almost remember but can't quite grasp. You follow him outside, where the night wraps around the courtyard like a velvet blanket. The stars are shockingly sharp, like someone scraped the sky clean. A few monks walk slow circles, barefoot on the flagstones, palms pressed together. They're practicing dream walking, a kind of lucid dreaming prep that blurs the line between wakefulness and sleep. As they walk, one of them murmurs, "Know your dream, or your dream will know you." You're not entirely sure what that means, but it definitely sounds wise, and also slightly threatening, in a mysterious monk way. You find a quiet spot to lie down, staring up at the stars. The night is silent except for the occasional soft step, the rustle of robes, and the whisper of breath. And as your eyes begin to drift closed, you remember something a Taoist master once wrote. In waking, the world touches you. In dreaming, you touch the world. You breathe a little deeper. The mat is surprisingly comfortable now. Warmth seeps into your spine. You feel the green light spiral gently down, just like they described. It's like tuning an invisible instrument inside your chest, one that hums when you finally hit the right note. Somewhere nearby, a monk gently strikes a bowl-shaped bell, and the sound stretches like honey across the night. Sleep here isn't passive. It's an art, a conversation, a ritual that teaches you how to listen inward until your breath and the mountain are indistinguishable. And maybe, if you're lucky, your dream self will step out of your body, walk barefoot into the stars, and remember something your waking self has long since forgotten. You feel your spirit settle. The breath slows, and the night deepens. The bell's hum lingers as you drift out of the monastery, not walking exactly, but gliding in that way dreams let you. The ground beneath you melts into clouds, then stone, then polished wood. You're inside again, this time in a quiet scholar's retreat. An elegant study tucked behind a lacquered screen where the ink has barely dried and the oil lamp flickers low, throwing slow-moving shadows across paper walls. In this next chapter of your ancient sleep odyssey, you find yourself seated in the study of a Confucian thinker. The brush rests just inches from your fingertips, a scroll lies open on a bamboo mat, and outside the garden cricket choir chirps in patient rhythm. This isn't a monastery, and it's certainly not a clinic, but make no mistake, you're still deep inside a sleep lab of sorts. Because for these Confucian scholars, dreams weren't just body business, they were a matter of morality. Tonight's mainstream historical anchor. During the late Tang and Song dynasties, Confucian intellectuals began interpreting dreams through the lens of personal virtue. Unlike the Taoists and physicians who saw dreams as spiritual messages or health clues, Confucians viewed them as reflections of one's inner ethics, like an overnight character test. You fall into conversation, or what feels like it, with the dream keeper of this house. A gently aging scholar with snow-dusted hair and a voice like old parchment. He's just finished writing an entry in his dream journal, and with a tired smile he invites you to read. The entry goes something like this. Dreamt I reprimanded a friend unfairly. Awoke with guilt. Must examine my attitude toward disagreement. That's it. No dragons, no floating through walls, no flying over jade palaces. Just introspection. Confucian scholars didn't seek escape in dreams. They sought clues, tiny, flickering hints about where their minds might be misaligned with virtue. If you dreamt of cheating, lying, or failing your duties, time to review your conscience. They weren't trying to banish dreams. They wanted to correct them. Quirky tidbit time. One especially rule-following Confucian wrote that he'd slap himself awake during a dream if he caught himself doing something dishonorable, like kissing someone inappropriate or stealing a peach. Not after waking. During. That's next-level dream control. Imagine lucid dreaming with a built-in ethics committee. In fact, dream journaling was so integral to some scholars' daily routine that they'd rate their own dreams each morning for moral integrity. Not dream quality, not plotline, just whether they upheld social harmony. Imagine reviewing your dream like a performance review. Dreamt I yelled at my cousin. Again, needs work. You settle in next to a small stack of these journals, leafing through delicately. Most dreams involve everyday events, visiting relatives, teaching students, writing poetry, but each one is followed by a personal reflection. Did I act honorably? Was I fair? Did I honor my elders even in sleep? And here's where the philosophical knot tightens. Historians still argue whether these Confucian dreams were literal experiences or literary devices. Some scholars suggest the dreams were embellished to serve as moral case studies. Others argue that these dreams were genuinely recorded each morning, offering real glimpses into the subconscious minds of medieval men, trying very hard not to disappoint their ancestors. Either way, the emotional tension is real. You read one final entry before setting the scroll down. Dreamt I wore my father's robes and lectured a crowd. Awoken shame. I am not yet ready. Oof. Even your dreams are giving you imposter syndrome. But it wasn't all shame spirals. Some Confucian thinkers believed that a virtuous person would naturally dream of clarity. Clean rivers, open skies, harmonious gatherings. And indeed, one of the journals you browse has this serene line. Dreamt of clear water flowing through white reeds. Felt peace. May my mind remain thus. So if your dreams were chaotic, filled with argument or confusion, that was your subconscious nudging you to recalibrate. The mind, after all, was a moral mirror. The scholar beside you offers you a cup of faux Thai root tea, brewed to strengthen memory and still the mind before bed. It's earthy, slightly sweet, and hums in your chest like a cello note. He motions toward the writing desk and hands you a brush. You hesitate, but then begin. You write your own dream journal entry. Maybe it's about a strange floating temple, or arguing with a cat in formal robes, or wandering through a sleep clinic filled with dream-analyzing physicians and incense bowls. Whatever it is, you close with one line. May I wake with gentleness and walk in balance. Outside the retreat, the night air is dense with the perfume of late-blooming gardenias. Crickets chirp in clusters, their music falling into the rhythm of your breath. And you realize something. Confucian sleep wasn't about control or escape. It was about becoming a better person, slowly, silently, even while unconscious. Even your dream self was expected to grow. You lie down one last time on the polished wood floor, head resting on a low, lacquered headrest, a traditional pillow that's more aesthetic than comfortable. Your eyes close, your breath slows, and somewhere between this world and the next, your thoughts settle into silence. Maybe you'll dream of reeds and rivers, or maybe you'll just sleep, and that tonight is more than enough. You awaken, or half awaken, in a place that feels familiar, though you can't say why. There's a quiet rustle of fabric, the creak of bamboo, and the unmistakable scent of fresh ink mingled with warm candle wax. The walls here are lined with scrolls, not ones you'd find in a Confucian study or a Taoist sanctuary, but something stranger, looser, more dreamlike. This is where the poets sleep. You're in the sleeping quarters of an ancient Chinese poetry guild. Yes, that was a thing, and even here, in their most intimate hours, poetry wasn't far behind. As you tuck yourself into a thin linen sheet on a low wooden cot, someone nearby mumbles in their sleep. The moon fell through my roof and landed in my tea. Sounds about right. Tonight's mainstream historical nugget. During the Tang Dynasty, often called the Golden Age of Chinese poetry, poets like Li Bai, Du Fu, and Meng Haoran not only wrote about dreams, but often in dreams. Some even claim that their best verses came to them while they slept. Li Bai, the beloved wild spirit of the Tang era, famously described dreams as drifting on wine among the stars. He once wrote that he visited the moon in his sleep and traded verses with ghosts. Whether or not he actually dreamed it doesn't really matter. What mattered was that he made the dream feel more real than reality. You peek at a scroll lying beside your pillow. It's written in a sleepy scrawl and starts mid-thought. Last night I met my shadow under plum blossoms. It asked me why I stayed awake. There's no moral to that line. No medical insight, just wonder. Quirky detail of the night. Some poets slept with small brushes and inkstones near their beds. Not for dramatic effect, though it is dramatic, but because they claimed inspiration often arrived during dreams, and they had only moments upon waking to capture it. Kind of like the ancient version of grabbing your notes app at 3 a.m. to write time-traveling dumpling detective before forgetting it forever. You lie back as the wind presses gently through a cracked window pane. Somewhere outside, a zither plays a note so faint it could be mistaken for a heartbeat. A figure, possibly real, possibly dreamt, sits nearby, writing with sleepy precision. Every few minutes, they stop to whisper the line aloud, tasting it like a fruit. There was a time, they say, when an emperor demanded dream poems from his court writers. Write what the spirit shows you, or risk offending the unseen. The result was a burst of surreal verses. Sleeping dragons beneath waterfalls, palaces made of dew, and lovers who turned into paper lanterns as dawn broke. And here's our scholarly debate for the section. Historians still argue whether the dream poem tradition was genuinely fueled by nocturnal visions, or if these artists were simply using the dream motif as a license to be weirder, freer, more experimental. Were they dreaming these poems, or just saying they were? You roll onto your side, and for a moment you can hear Li Bai laughing. Maybe at the critics, maybe at himself. Maybe just because he liked how the moon looked in a cup of wine. You imagine him scribbling in the dark, half drunk, completely enchanted, murmuring, "We sleep in the waking world, and wake only when we dream." There's a certain freedom in that. While doctors tracked dreams for diagnosis and monks for enlightenment, and Confucian scholars for moral reflection, these poets, they just followed the mystery. Let the images lead. Trusted nonsense to make sense. The dream is the poem. The poem is the dream. And maybe your own thoughts are starting to drift now too. You close your eyes and let a line form in your head. Something strange and lovely. You're walking through an orchard and the fruit are glowing from the inside. Each one is a dream you haven't dreamed yet. You reach out. Pick one. Taste it. It tastes like memory. Somewhere in the distance, a voice recites softly, "If sleep is the ink, then let dreams write." And that's all you need to hear. Outside, the wind picks up, not harsh, just enough to flutter a page or two. You listen to it, half awake, feeling as if the world itself is writing something you can almost read. A quiet rustle, a soft pause, a dream you'll remember only by its warmth. One of the poets, barefoot and wrapped in a robe, passes your cot and whispers, "Don't worry if it doesn't make sense, just let it be beautiful." And somehow that's the best writing advice you've ever heard. You turn onto your back again. The cot creaks. The lantern dims. Your breath lengthens. Sleep comes easy when it doesn't demand answers. When it's not a mirror or a test or a ritual, but just a space to float. You close your eyes again and let your mind wander, unburdened by meaning, drifting like a lotus petal on the surface of a dream-written lake. You're somewhere else now. Not a clinic, not a monastery, not even a poet's flickering dreamscape. You're walking through a quiet marketplace at dawn. Though time here feels like it's being generous, stretching the early morning into something slower, almost ceremonial. Lanterns still glow faintly. Shopkeepers sweep gently at nothing in particular, and smoke from incense coils like silk in the still air. It's peaceful, but there's a hum beneath the surface. Something's different. You follow the scent of sandalwood down a narrow lane and step into a building that feels like part apothecary, part temple, part archive? Shelves rise along the walls, lined not just with herbs and powders, but with carefully stacked dream journals. Dozens, maybe hundreds, each one tied with red string and labeled with small wooden tags. You've found one of the rarest treasures in ancient China, a private dream archive. These weren't royal libraries or state collections, but humble community archives kept by small groups, healers, scholars, even families, who recorded dreams passed down through generations. Each book is a woven tapestry of nighttime visions, half-heard voices, and symbolic riddles. Tonight's mainstream historical insight. In certain regions of Song and Yuan, Dynasty China, particularly in remote scholarly communities, people believed dreams could be inherited, both the symbols and the meaning. Families sometimes passed dream interpretations through generations, treating them as spiritual heirlooms. A dream of a red bird or a broken mirror might carry a very specific warning, because great-grandfather once dreamed the same thing before a flood. And here's your quirky tidbit for this chapter. In one village, it was believed that if 3 people in a household dreamed of fire in the same week, the dream itself could ignite a literal flame, usually somewhere strange like a rice bin or behind a statue. So they kept fire logs, not logs that burned, but logs about dreams of burning, just in case. You pull one of the scrolls from the shelf, carefully. The string falls away, and inside you find a list of dreams from what appears to be a 14-year-old girl from the late 1100s. Her entries are brief but sharp. Dreamt I lost my braid. Woke up and found it tangled. Dreamt a blue horse carried my books away. Dreamt my mother gave me a mirror, but it showed her face. These aren't nightmares, they're riddles. And she treated them with weight, cataloging them alongside weather, family tensions, even the color of her robe that day. This was not idle diary keeping. This was pattern recognition. You begin to understand that in this place, dreams weren't just personal. They were part of a larger code. A community's shared dreamscape. A strange, floating language spoken across bloodlines. Historians still argue whether these inherited dreams were actual traditions or retroactive storytelling. Some say families reshaped memories to match dreams after something significant happened. Others suggest that keeping dream records altered how future generations experienced their own dreams, sort of like planting the seed of expectation. You lean back against one of the wooden beams, your eyes adjusting to the dusty golden light. Across the room, a woman is adding a new scroll to the shelf. She glances over and smiles softly as if to say, "Yes, this is for the future too." In a way, this whole archive is a form of dreaming forward, passing not just interpretations, but the value of paying attention. It's as if every generation is saying, "Remember your dreams. One day, they might remember you back." There's a low bench nearby where you sit and watch as someone ties a new journal shut with red thread. It's such a small action, but it feels ceremonial. You notice that several journals are organized by dream themes: water, animals, teeth, flight. One section is labeled simply, "Returning Ancestors." You leaf through one. Dozens of entries begin the same way. Dreamt grandmother returned. Said I was forgetting the rice. Dreamt father came back to fix the door latch. Told me not to sell the ox. Dreamt uncle smiled but said nothing. His hands smelled of ink. You can't help but smile. It's part ghost story, part therapy, part cultural GPS. And tonight, as your eyes begin to feel heavier, you realize this archive doesn't just record dreams, it honors them, validates them, gives them weight, even when they're nonsense. Especially when they're nonsense. Because somewhere between your dream and someone else's, a truth might flicker, just long enough to be remembered. You lie back on the bench, arms crossed under your head. The woman finishes shelving her scrolls and extinguishes the last lamp. In the dark, the scent of sandalwood still lingers, warm and steady. You don't know what you'll dream tonight, but maybe someone somewhere will dream it too. And maybe centuries from now, someone will open a scroll and say, "Ah, yes, this one." And they'll understand something you never quite did. By now, the sky in your dreamscape is more suggestion than sky. An indigo wash with no real direction, no true source of light. You move forward, though the ground beneath you has stopped pretending to be solid. It's just dream stuff. The air hums with possibility. You arrive in a garden, not carefully pruned, but wildly alive. Bamboo leans at reckless angles. Moss coats winding stones. A small waterfall murmurs to itself. And at the garden's edge, tucked behind a curtain of weeping willow branches, sits a structure that looks like a study, but breathes like a lung. It's a private sleep chamber built for lucid dreaming. Yes, they had those. Tonight's mainstream historical insight. By the Ming Dynasty, some Taoist practitioners and sleep-focused scholars began experimenting with techniques to induce specific kinds of dreams, what we'd now call lucid dreaming. They believed that if you could learn to stay conscious within a dream, you could access hidden knowledge, spiritual insight, or even, depending on who you asked, immortality. Step inside this chamber. It's spare, clean, but not empty. Everything in the room has a job. The floor is soft, woven matting, padded at the edges to cradle you like a petal. A low brazier releases a carefully timed curl of smoke infused with wild jujube and mugwort, two herbs thought to strengthen shen, or spirit. And in the corner, barely visible, hangs a dream bell. It's light enough to ring if your breathing pattern changes too suddenly. A subtle way to keep your awareness inside the dream. Quirky detail time. Some dreamers use silk-wrapped pebbles placed near their temples to induce sleep pressure. A slight discomfort that served as a tether between waking and dream states. If the pressure disappeared in the dream, it was a clue. You're dreaming. Sort of like a reality check, ancient edition. You lie down on the cushioned mat. A young man, likely a novice dream traveler, sits beside you. whispering a soft script designed to be memorized and repeated as you fall asleep. It goes something like this. The crane knows it flies. The fish knows it swims. I know I dream. You repeat it silently, once, twice, a third time, as your body begins to sink into stillness. This was more than sleep. This was training. Some texts from the period, now brittle with age and foxing, describe entire dream curricula. Exercises to perform within a dream, symbols to seek out, challenges to overcome. Fly over water, walk through fire, find the hidden door. Each task, once accomplished, was believed to strengthen your consciousness, expand your spiritual capacity. Historians still debate whether this was mysticism or very early proto-psychology. Some argue these practices had no real scientific base and were purely spiritual rituals. Others see in them the roots of modern sleep science, self-awareness training, memory imprinting, even lucid dream induction techniques remarkably similar to those used today. But lying here, none of that really matters. What matters is how deliberate it all is. This isn't a nap. This is a doorway. And you're standing in the threshold. The novice beside you continues to whisper, I dream gently. I wake gently. I remain. His tone is steady, like waves in a shallow bay. You feel his words ripple through you, and then quite suddenly you are floating. Not metaphorically, not symbolically. Your body is still in the chamber, but your dreaming self, rises. Softly. Silently. You look down and see the mat, the novice, the flickering brazier. You can smell the smoke, but now it smells like rain. You can hear the bell, but now it rings like a bird. You're in the dream, and you know it. For a moment, you feel invincible. You try flying. Easy. Breathing underwater. Child's play. Walking through the garden's stone walls like mist. But then the dream resists. A strange figure appears, not threatening, not even fully visible, just present, watching. And you remember something from the scrolls. The purpose isn't to control the dream, it's to observe it clearly. You lower yourself gently to the dream ground and bow to the figure. It bows back. There is no conversation, but you feel a truth exchanged, a sort of silent agreement. I see you. You see me. Let's keep going. You spend what feels like hours, or moments, walking this lucid landscape. You pick a plum from a tree and taste only light. You cup your hands in a stream, and they fill with memories. You hear your own voice, but it's coming from a stone. It's all real, and it's all dream. Eventually, the figure dissolves. The garden fades. The dream grows thin, and you return. Eyes flutter open. The novice is still sitting there watching with patient pride. He smiles, sensing your awareness. You've done it. Walked the bridge between worlds and come back intact. He pours you a small cup of tea. Bitter. Earthy. Grounding. You drink it in silence. And as the last of the smoke drifts from the brazier, you feel something settle in you, not knowledge exactly, but presence. Like you've seen a part of yourself you forgot was there. Maybe that's all lucid dreaming really is. Not some mystical skill or esoteric performance, but a way of remembering that you're always dreaming, just a little. You walk back through the garden slowly. The willow branches part for you. The sky is still that indigo suggestion. You don't know if you'll dream lucidly again. But you know how it felt, and that feeling is yours to keep. It's yours. The air has thickened now. Not in a heavy way, but in that slow, molasses kind of softness that comes right before dawn. Somewhere nearby, a rooster probably thinks about waking up, but even it hesitates, sensing that this moment isn't meant to be broken just yet. You've been traveling for hours through clinics and temples, poems and scrolls, gardens of the mind and chambers of the soul, and now, here at the edge of it all, there is silence. But not the empty kind, the full kind. You find yourself back in a quiet village, the kind that appears in dreams only after you've earned it. Lanterns sway gently on hooks. Trees shimmer with a silver coat of dew. A few villagers sleep openly on shaded verandas, breathing with the calm of people who trust their sleep to do its work. And you? You're guided to one final space. Not a clinic, not a sanctuary, just a room. With a low bed, a folded blanket, and a single open window where the breeze has clearly been waiting for you. You step inside. You know this is the end of your journey, not in the dramatic, closing the book kind of way, but in the sleepy, toe-curling, I'll remember this in the morning, maybe kind of way. You lie down, not because you're told to, not because it's time, but because every part of you knows the rhythm now, knows how to settle. Let's look at tonight's final mainstream historical insight. In some corners of ancient China, especially under the later dynasties, sleep was considered not merely a biological need or even a spiritual practice, but a political act. Scholars believed that true rest, deep, deliberate, and unhindered by duty, was something only a free person could claim. Sleep was autonomy. Think about that. To rest well was not laziness, it was resistance. It was self-possession. It meant your mind wasn't chained to the noise of the outside world. You owned your sleep, and in that, you owned yourself. And for our final fringe detail, there were once traveling dream interpreters who wandered from village to village. Not healers or monks, just soft-spoken men and women with good memory and a flair for riddles. For a small bowl of rice and a night's shelter, they'd sit at your table and ask, "Tell me what you saw." Then they'd close their eyes and offer meanings that might change your entire season. One story claims that a single whispered interpretation ended a feud between two rival families. Another says a dream interpreter warned a farmer to move his pigs before the mountain rains, and saved his entire village. Whether they were prophets, poets, or just really good listeners, no one knows. Historians still argue whether these dream interpreters truly influenced lives or simply gave shape to what people already knew deep down. Maybe it was all just narrative comfort. Or maybe, like dreams themselves, it only mattered if you believed it mattered. You listen now to your own breath, the soft hush of fabric against your skin, the night pressing gently against the window. Someone nearby sighs in their sleep, a good sigh. You smile without moving. Maybe the dream interpreters were right. Maybe meaning doesn't need to be proven. Maybe it just needs to be felt. You pull the blanket over your legs. It smells faintly of cedar and dried jasmine. Not overwhelming, just enough. The room adjusts itself around you, silently, invisibly, respectfully. And as your body grows heavier, your mind grows lighter. No more temples, no more scrolls, no more whispers from the past. Only you and the quiet beating of something kind. You remember the Taoist who called dreams the gate of the 10,000 things. You remember the poet who said the moon slipped into his wine. You remember the doctor who tracked dreams like weather, the monk who dissolved into a crane, the girl who dreamed of her mother's face in a mirror. And now maybe someone will remember you. Maybe in 100 years a dream will float through someone else's night, unfamiliar but warm, and it will carry the scent of sandalwood and the sound of a soft voice saying, "You're safe here. Just sleep." You turn your head toward the window where the sky's beginning to blur with pale light. Not quite sunrise, not quite night. Perfect. And now we slow down. Let your breath lengthen just a little. In through your nose, gentle and full. Out through your mouth, soft and slow. Like waves pulling back from the shore. Your body sinks deeper into whatever surface cradles you. Bed, couch, hammock, floor. Doesn't matter. Gravity is your friend now. Let it hold you. Let it take the weight. The stories have done their work. The dream clinics, the ancient herbs, the drifting poets, and lucid seekers, all of it still lingers, soft and golden, somewhere just behind your eyelids. You don't have to remember every detail. Dreams don't need clarity, only space. As your thoughts start to melt at the edges, remind yourself gently, there's nowhere you need to be. nothing you need to do, and absolutely no test on Tang Dynasty dream manuals tomorrow morning. You are allowed to rest completely. And if your mind wanders, let it. Let it drift like mist across a lake. Let it circle and spiral and forget what it was worried about. Let it become someone else's story for a while. Sleep, when it comes, won't ask permission. It will arrive like a kind guest, barefoot, quiet, full of good intentions. And when you wake, hours from now, you might remember the moon in a cup of tea, or a temple built inside a dream, or just a sense of peace that stuck around longer than usual. That would be enough. So, rest well, and dream deeply.